think I'm okay with this. I can make this work for a couple years.
Yeah.
I don't want to go to a different unit. Like, this is fine. And so I did. I stayed there, I think, for 3 years. And I learned a lot. I learned a lot about people. I learned a lot about myself. And by the end of that, I was actually looking at moving on somewhere else. So a few months later, I ended up going to a hospital. And then I worked with younger patients.
This is Unmasked.
Do you ever deal with FOMO?
Sometimes I have FOMO, yeah. And I would say in the beginning, I definitely had a lot of FOMO. When I was getting to know, more of Phoenix, more of Arizona, and just networking, I was like, oh man, if I don't go to this, I'm going to miss something. I know it. But now I'm just like, okay, I missed something.
Yeah.
But is it really like more important to me than what I'm working on? Like, is what I'm missing a priority? Or is it just like a really fun night with people that I don't really know? Or is it a really fun night with people I do know?
We're not using these headphones.
And for me, at this point, I'll look at something, I'll look at an invite, I'll look at an event, I'll be like, man, I wish I could really go. But if I have 5 other things going on, like, I don't want to back out of something I already committed to.
Right. Kind of just learning how to reprioritize things a little bit.
And like some things you can move, right?
Yeah.
Like if it's a haircut, absolutely you can move it, no problem. But if it's something where like it's a business deal or a meeting or a good connection and you gave your word to be there, like I absolutely am going to prioritize showing up for that versus being like, oh, man, everyone's at this party tonight, I want to go, but there's this business meeting. No, like I'm just past that in that point in my life.
And I feel like it's hard, especially if you are someone that deals with a lot of FOMO. I feel like it's really hard to kind of get yourself in the mentality that there's going to be other nights, there's going to be other parties, there's going to be other celebrations. This isn't the last one there's ever going to be. Yeah. But like I personally have dealt with FOMO so much. I wasn't the kid in high school going to all the parties and stuff. And
I wasn't either. I know that's a surprise, but no, I wasn't either. I was so antisocial. Like really? I not only didn't go to parties, I wasn't invited and I wasn't allowed out. My parents were so strict.
Oh man.
Yeah. But.
My parents, it wasn't like this whole strictness thing. That's not why I went. I didn't really go with that kind of crowd in high school. I wasn't part of like the cool kids or the jocks, like especially my senior year. My goal almost was to be invisible because I was like,
That's
I don't.
So relatable.
Yeah. I was like, I don't care about making all these friends. I mean, I was in the mentality that most of the people that I was going to know during my senior year, I wasn't going to see again after that because they're going to be moving to all these different states, going to college here, going there. I'm like, I also don't want to hurt myself emotionally with getting attached to somebody just so that, like, hey, it's senior year. Like, I'm sorry, I'm going to Penn State or I'm going to Stanford or I'm going to NYU or something. And I'm like, oh, shoot. Okay, well.
Where did you go to high school?
So I went to Flagstaff. Well, okay, so technically I went to 2 different high schools.
Okay.
So my freshman year, freshman and half of sophomore year, I went to Flagstaff High School in Flagstaff. And then I transferred about halfway through my sophomore year to this, like, performing arts high school because my best friend at the time, he went there. And I was kind of just super stressed out with the whole public school thing. And I was just like, you know what? I mean, the way he's talking about the schedule, the way he's talking about the atmosphere there.
Like, it sounds nice.
It sounds really nice.
Let me try it out.
Yeah, it was like a block schedule. It was a whole different thing. It wasn't like the typical school type of thing. It was, there wasn't sports there. There was no, like, typical jock type of things there. It was like, I was like, oh, this is going to be really interesting. And so I ended up going there. And, like, at first, it was really cool. I enjoyed it. It threw me off a lot, the fact, like, the popular ones or the dance majors or the ones who were extremely talented at like painting or drawing or something. I was like, this is interesting. It was like a real life that school that Victorious. I don't know if you ever watched that.
Was that on Nickelodeon?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was like a real life version of that school to where
This is when I was allowed to watch TV.
allowed to watch
Yeah.
TV.
Yeah.
What point were you not allowed to watch TV?
The majority of my childhood.
Really?
Yeah.
Like no TV, not even like PBS or anything?
Even PBS was a struggle because when I was growing up, I really liked Dragon Tales.
Okay.
But that was one of the shows I wasn't allowed to watch. I missed an entire generation of references because I wasn't allowed to watch SpongeBob.
I wasn't either. I'm actually I've been learning. So I thought that me not being allowed to watch SpongeBob was the weirdest thing ever because I grew up with all the kids around me watching SpongeBob and stuff. And I wasn't allowed to watch it. And then as I grew up and I started telling people, I have had more and more and more people saying they weren't allowed to watch it. I'm like, oh, okay, so my childhood wasn't as chaotic or wasn't as psycho as I thought it was.
Like, it wasn't just me. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I get it. There was a lot that I wasn't allowed to watch. And I think at that point, the only reason I was, like, able to watch TV and, like, have more TV in my life because my mom was getting an associate's degree. Like, she was going back to school. And there was just, like, no one to, like, babysit me, essentially.
Right.
And I was a teenager at that point, so I don't really need to be babysat. And it's not like I was doing anything improper or wrong. It was like I'm watching shows. So
What do you think is the age that babysitting? Because I've seen different things. Like I've seen 13-year-olds babysitting 9-year-olds, but then I've also seen 13-year-olds being babysat.
Well, I think it just goes back to age is a number. It's not a sense of maturity. And it goes back to the comfort level of the parents because everyone has different parenting styles for sure.
That's true.
And that's not to say that my parents weren't still strict then. I was just allowed to watch more TV.
Yeah. That makes sense because it was very strict on which type of TV that I was allowed to watch, but doesn't mean I didn't watch it. I found ways to like watch it and stuff, and whether it got me in trouble or not, I didn't care. I was like, I'm just gonna watch it. But even looking now, especially with just like the kids of today, I'm kind of glad that I was limited. Like at my mom's house, I could watch almost as much TV as I wanted to, versus at my dad's house, we didn't even have cable. So I had to like explore my imagination a lot more. And then seeing these kids of today that are stuck on iPads and stuff every day, all day, they go to school and it's on this. They're at home and I'm seeing
it's completely different.
I'm seeing like a whole different generation of stimulation because that's literally what it is. When you're watching these TV shows and stuff, it's just stimulation for your brain.
Or like how homework looks different now, or like how class is just
I used to have to actually open a book to actually write with the pencil and stuff and not go through a little digital worksheet and stuff. And when I'm talking to teacher friends and I'm like, I don't think I'd be able to do school these days if it was like that. I'd be too distracted. I'd be too much like, oh, I'm on an iPad. I wonder if I could jailbreak this or something. Like that was the cool thing. When
like
I was
as
in
a
high school.
kid, I could agree with you. As an adult, I can definitely say I have the discipline now to where I'd be like, no, I'm focused on school. And part of that is like for my high school experience, I went to 3 different high schools.
Did you really?
I did. So my freshman year was online, and then I fell behind in credits because I was building that discipline to be able to go to school online. It's really grueling, honestly. It wasn't so much the distractions as it was like you just have to sit there and read. And I would read it and be like, oh, wait, what did I just read? I was falling asleep. Like, it was just so boring. So I would say that it's definitely one of the things that made freshman year hard. So then when I started my sophomore year being behind on credits, like being in the environment around other students, because I went to a physical high school, I was like, okay, this is so much easier. I caught up on credits in a semester. I was back on track. And I continued to take online classes all the way up until I graduated. I think it's like my senior year. I actually graduated a semester ahead. I was trying to graduate a year ahead. So I
went from like being behind to coming out on top.
Yeah. So I went to the online high school, and then I went to high school in New Hampshire. And then my senior year, my last semester, I transferred out here to Arizona, and I went to Buena and Sierra Vista.
What was that adjustment like?
I honestly didn't care.
Yeah.
I didn't care. I didn't care at all because for me, I really just wanted to graduate.
Yeah.
I didn't care where I went to high school. I didn't care how many high schools I went to. Like, it kind of sucked because I was going to finish over the summer and just not do my senior year. That was what I was expecting. Like, I even did senior skip day during my junior year because I was expecting that. That's what I was planning on. But yeah, it was interesting to go to so many high schools because most people don't have that experience. And to be at a new high school my senior semester and to have to take like 2 freshman classes, I was like, man, this sucks. But I still got to graduate. And the benefit of it is in Arizona, you can do reverse credit, right? So you can go to the high school and you can then also go to community college or just college.
Yes.
And you can get the credits for the high school and for the college at the same time. So a lot of people did that at my high school here in Arizona, and they were graduating with their associate's degrees. And I would say that definitely kept me in this mode of staying ahead.
Okay.
Because I ended up taking like a certified nursing assistant class. So I got my CNA like by the time I turned 18 because I had to have a waiver to like be in the class because I was turning 18 in the class essentially. And then it just kept me ahead because I remember seeing my peers from other high schools and middle schools. They weren't getting their associate degrees until like a year or 2 years after I had mine. And I was like, this is crazy that this one small change changed my entire trajectory for my career and my education.
I definitely relate to that. I was trying to actually do a similar thing my senior year. So, are you familiar with the show Shameless?
I've seen maybe 2 episodes.
Okay. So, later in the seasons, and the spoiler alert for anyone, which shouldn't be a spoiler alert because it's been out for so long.
It has been. You can spoil it for me. You have permission.
One of the main characters, Ian, he becomes an EMT. And so seeing him doing that, I was still kind of trying to figure out the trajectory of my life, trying to figure out where I wanted to go, what I wanted to do. And I see that. And then my dad had a little bit of medical experience as well. And so I was like, I mean, I could go into the medical field, fulfill my passion of helping people, but not have to do 20 million years of school to become like a doctor or anything. So I was trying to do that. And then my school had that same thing, that whole, you sign up for these classes and then after school you pretty much bus over to the community college, take your classes there, and then that's it. And I was like, oh, cool. Is there EMT off? And like, yeah, absolutely. I'm like, oh, sweet. And so I went in to see the school counselor, and I was like, hey, can you sign me up for this? I would love to do this. She's like, yeah, absolutely. And then I came in like a week and a half later. I'm like, hey, I haven't heard anything. Like, did you get me signed up? She's like, I totally forgot to do it. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, that's no issue. Can you get me signed up? She's like, the deadline was Friday. And I'm like, I came to you Monday.
That stinks.
And so I couldn't get my certification because she totally spaced it and she didn't get me signed up. And so it was like, there was even a girl in my math class that was doing that. So she was like, kind of rubbing it in, like, oh, yeah, no, I just did this clinical. I just did this. And I was just like, I would love to be doing that.
Was that your senior year? Or was that like, oh, man.
Yeah, that was my senior year.
That stinks because that was your last chance.
That was the last little bit of a chance I got. I mean, I did end up going to school to do EMT and stuff afterward, but it wasn't the same.
Yeah. Did you end up becoming an EMT?
No. So it was like halfway through that class is when I really started, like, I was introduced to photography my senior year, but I hadn't been taking it like super seriously. It was still more like a hobby. And then it wasn't until after my senior year that I really started kind of taking it seriously. I was also trying to get YouTube to be a little bit more relevant and trying to get those things going. And I didn't want to be an actor just yet, but I wanted to be in production. I wanted to kind of get, like, I had an idea for like a cops thing, but instead of cops, it's ambulance stuff. And I'm like, oh, what if I could just like take a GoPro with me and do calls and stuff on an ambulance and try to make a show out of that and stuff. But I didn't want to deal with all the legality of that. But part of the way through that, I just started falling more and more in love with production, and I ended up slacking a little bit too much with homework and stuff. Like, I got most of the certifications. I had my BLS, I had my CPR, I had my incident command certification. Didn't get my hazmat. That was the one I didn't get. But I pretty much got everything else. And I take the test just in case. I'm like, who knows? Maybe somehow I actually know this information. but I failed the test, so I didn't end up actually becoming an EMT.
And the test is hard. Like, it's
Oh, it
really no joke.
It is gruesome. Like,
Yeah.
there's the written test, which is like 100 questions, and you have to get like 80 to 90% right. And then there's a physical test of having to make sure you do that. And then typically, especially for going for an ambulance, like the one in Flagstaff, they have an additional test after that. And for me, I'm not the best at tests.
Yeah.
I'm not horrible at them, but it really depends on the test. It depends on the subject, how passionate it was. Like, if you were to give me a personal finance test, I probably would do okay on that one just because that was my thing for a while. Or if you were to give me a photography test or something, depending on what questions and stuff, because it also depends on who's issuing the test of like how specific they want to go into stuff. And so
yeah, because those tests are really structured differently.
yeah.
But no, I get it because I'm not a great test taker either. And I was like madly studying for my test because literally I took it the day before I moved.
Really?
Yeah. Like I had to call to get like special permission to get on the list like 2-3 months in advance of finishing that class. It's like, hey, I'm about to move. Can you schedule me for this test now? And they're like, well, we generally don't schedule them until 3 months after you graduate. And I was like, I don't think I'm coming back for a while. So is there any way that we can do this test now? I'm looking at moving out of state.
So did you actually become a CNA for a while?
Yeah. I was a CNA for 4 to 6 years, something like that.
Really?
Yeah. So I worked as a CNA as I finished my bachelor's degree in college.
Okay.
And it was a lot because when you have that type of job, like it is a professional job, right? And a lot of people just don't understand that because they'll have internships or they'll just take a job as a student or work studies. And I'm like, I can't just say that I need the day off. Like I get my schedule anywhere from 2 months in advance to like a month in advance, you know? And it got kind of frustrating with extracurriculars because they'd be like, oh, well, we're going to do this event next week. We need you to go. And I was like, I literally can't go. Like, you
didn't
can't.
have the typical college job. It wasn't just like you work at Jack in the Box to try to make rent or something for doing. You had an actual professional job that was like, your coworkers are typically not people your age. Your coworkers are like women, men in their early 30s on up. No,
I actually started at a retirement home.
Oh, really?
Which is also like known as a SNF, like a skilled nursing facility.
Okay.
So I started there, and I actually started like pretty fresh. Like I was pretty green when I started on that unit, and it was one of the hardest units there because they were like mentally ill, but not very ambulatory, so they couldn't necessarily run away, or if they did run away, like it was kind of hard for them too. Like this sounds so bad. Oh my gosh.
I just visualize like an old person with their walker, like you can't catch me.
Yeah, like they had walkers, they had wheelchairs.
Yeah.
But they also like had to stay. They couldn't just leave. Like it was either state issued or family issued.
Yeah.
Like they had to stay.
It couldn't be like a refusal of service type of thing.
Correct. Or even court issued at that point. So they did have to stay. And again, like it's one of the hardest units there. Not a lot of people want to work there, and then not a lot of people would stay there. Like they would try to leave. And I was just like, I think I'm okay with this. I can make this work for a couple years. I don't want to go to a different unit. Like this is fine. And so I did. I stayed there, I think, for 3 years. And I learned a lot. I learned a lot about people. I learned a lot about myself. And by the end of that, I was actually looking at moving on somewhere else. So a few months later, I ended up going to a hospital. And then I worked with younger patients. And those patients, it was also a very hard unit. It was a trauma unit. And I saw anything from burns to bullet holes to traumatic brain injuries.
Was this in Arizona still?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. So like doing Phoenix stuff, like you're seeing everything.
Yeah. I saw everything. We even had patients that came up from like Mexico or other states.
Yeah.
Just because they needed to get care that they couldn't get there because
right.
we had like the biggest trauma unit in the area. And it's so different because by the end of it, I was like, I'm burnt out. Like I don't have any more empathy to give because it is a battery.
Oh, yeah.
It is. And I was constantly recharging. And I was just like, I'm glad that I didn't get my degree in this field. Like, I'm glad that I knew this going in, that I didn't want to do this forever, because it would stink if I just graduated with a nursing degree and I was like, I don't want to do this.
Yeah.
But I value the time that I had there, for sure. And I value that I was able to serve patients because I was very, very good at my job. And I was able to really make them feel at ease and calm because of everything that, I've gone through as a person, my experiences.
Right.
And I'm just like, you know what, it's going to be okay. This is what we're going to do today. These are your options, and just kind of go about the day with them. And so it was great, and definitely a different experience at a hospital as opposed to a SNF. Like, they're completely different areas of care. And it's just something that it will always be a part of me, but I'm happy to not go back to.
And I feel like you have very much kind of like an energy and like a tone about you that's not chaotic. So like, if someone is in that situation, like someone else that's like, no, it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. That kind of energy is not going to help them calm down. But like for someone like you, I feel like it's a lot easier. It's like, no, like I feel like it'd be easier for someone like you to calm someone down and kind of talk them through a little bit, like kind of slow down the situation a little bit.
Yeah, and it depends on the patient too, because everyone communicates in different ways and they receive communication in different ways. So just because I'm really good at my job for one person, another person will be like, she's aight. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. Like, if you want that person, that's fine. Like, I will trade out. It is your choice. We are in this together. So
honestly, I have the more people that I meet, like over the last probably 2 years, I've gotten to meet so many nurses and stuff. And just even from my clinical time, when I was doing my EMT stuff, seeing the bullshit they go through, seeing just everything. I mean, they're doing 12-hour schedules. It's not like a normal 9 to 5. Typically, they don't just get to walk in and then leave 7 hours later. Like, they're there from, most of the people I know are like night nurses. So they're there from like 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. And I'm like, I couldn't imagine doing something like that and like not being burnt out and stuff. Like, it's insane. Like the professions that I'm starting to learn more about, like teaching or nursing and stuff, where I'm like, you guys need to be the ones making like 6 to 7 figures with the amount of bullshit you guys go through, the amount of people, because it's not even just stuff that you have to learn, but that on top of the human interaction on it. Not only do you have to have all this stuff memorized, medications memorized, interactions memorized of, oh, this person's allergic to this, so I usually administer this drug to them, but maybe they're an addict or something, and so you don't want to do that. But then also just the interaction in general with that person, especially if they're someone who, I've met people like, oh, I had to work on this guy who had a Nazi symbol or something. And like obviously there's like the episodes Grey's Anatomy. I don't know if you've seen that show or not. I don't know what TV you've actually been able to watch.
I have seen some Grey's Anatomy.
But like there's that episode where the black doctor, she has to operate on the guy that has a swastika tattooed on his chest, and unfortunately you cannot let personal opinions or personal emotions get in the way of serving your patients. It doesn't matter if they do have "I hate blank" written on their forehead. You have to work on them. And I think that was another reason why I didn't want to be an EMT after a little bit, because I have no problem serving people, but the second things like, I don't know, like a child is in the situation and I have to help a child and the stepdad's over here doing this, or it's a case like sexual abuse or something like that, I don't know if I'd be able to keep my cool 100% in the situation, knowing that like you just did this to this person. I still have to save you because that's my job.
Yeah. And that's definitely harder. And to answer your question, no, I haven't seen that episode. I would be interested to see it. And I think it's fair to say anyone would be uncomfortable with someone with a swastika tattoo or that kind of history, not just one specific group of people.
Right.
But yeah, with those situations, it's definitely hard. But the benefit is that you usually work in a team and a
Mhm.
unit, and you can definitely be like, hey, this is a conflict of interest for me. Like,
Right.
it's better if I excuse myself and trade off with someone else. So if you ever did pursue being an EMT, you
Yeah.
definitely have that to look forward to. And the bonds that you build with those people that you're working with, it's completely different.
They're brothers and sisters to you.
I wouldn't say brothers and sisters, but I would say, like, if something went down, I know I could call them and be like, hey, can you help me out?
Yeah.
Yeah, like I know that I could.
Yeah.
And part of that too, like, we kind of live far away from each other now, so it would have to be in a specific area. But no, those people, those relationships that you build, it never goes away, no
Right.
matter how much time has passed, for sure.
Are you still connected to some of the people that you worked with in that time?
Yeah, you definitely leave lasting impressions, whether it's Facebook friends or phone numbers. Like, you can just call them up and talk to them.
So I'm curious then about this transition of nursing, CNA, and everything to now you're in finance.
I am.
So I'm
It's
curious,
quite a journey.
where did the interest for finance kind of peak in? Because I know some people are in it for the money, some people are in it for whatever the whole finance bro meme is and stuff, of doing all that. But then other people have a very personal reason of getting into that. Like for me, I had very personal reasons to get into it. But I'm curious about kind of your thing, because going from medical to finance, those are very,
They're
very
different fields. They are. It's interesting that you asked this, because I've been wondering myself, like, what took me on this trajectory and this journey, because I never thought I wanted to be in finance.
Okay.
But there's different parts of finance, right? There's accounting, there's personal finance, there's investments, and then there's different areas of supplemental. And for me, I thought for a long time that there was just investments and accounting. And I was like, well, I don't really want to deal with the stock market. I don't think that's for me.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't know. So I studied business because I didn't know what I wanted to do.
That's a good fallback.
I was like, regardless of what I do, this business degree, it's transferable.
It's a very, very kind of, it can go anywhere.
Yeah. Yeah. And when I was graduating, when I was interviewing, I interviewed for positions from human resources, recruiting, to, I think there was like one or two accounting that I turned down pretty fast. I was like, oh, that's what this is? No thanks.
Mm-hmm.
To contracts, to like even just continuing in the medical field in another area. And so at that point, when I was graduating college, I was already making almost $40K a year.
Oh, wow.
And that's pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like right out of college. And mind you, like I really didn't have internships. Like I had, I think, one externship, and I did like something for nonprofits and marketing, which was considered an internship, but like it wasn't paid.
Right.
And it was nonprofit. Nonprofit work is very different from for-profit work. And I was like, well, if I stay here, like most of these jobs are only offering to pay me the same amount, if not less, like 10K less. Why would I go backwards?
Mm-hmm.
So I actually made the jump and I moved, and I took a contract job that was supposed to be paying 10K more. You know, anything about contract work, it's a little different. It varies. You don't always get to control your days off.
Contract work in finance?
No. Well, kind of, but it was more so in electricity.
Okay.
But the finance aspect of it was billing. So it was like billing for an electric company.
So they contracted you to go out and do billing and stuff for them?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, instead of being a full-time employee. So anyway, as a contractor, you can always control days off and how that works and everything. So they promised something which was true if you worked 5 days a week and didn't take time off. But then they didn't tell you that you wouldn't be able to work on holidays. And I was like, that doesn't make sense. Like, that's a little shady the way this contract's set up. But regardless, it didn't matter. It was a year contract, and I was bored like 4 months in. And I was like, what am I going to do?
How
like,
long
this
was
is
this
not
contract?
challenging enough. It was a 1 year contract.
1 year, okay.
Yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
12 months, and I was bored 4 months in. And I was like, what am I going to do? Does this get harder? Do we do anything different? Are there any special projects? Like, what can I do? And they were like, yeah, no, we'll probably do a training in like 2 more months and we'll teach you how to do this. And I was like, is that it? Like, what happens after that? He's like, yeah, I don't know.
Just this?
Just this. And I was like, okay, thanks for letting me know. Look forward to that training in 2 more months.
Was this still in Arizona?
This was in Arizona.
Okay, so you couldn't even like travel. Like it wasn't like at least I'm in a new spot where like on my days off I can explore. It's like you're still in your own.
Yeah, I moved to a different part of Arizona, but
Okay.
still in Arizona. And then at that point I was like, okay, I need to figure out what I want to do with my life because I'm not happy with this. So at that point was when I was like, okay, I know I would be good at being a project manager, but I would probably also get bored after a period of time. So where would I want to be a project manager? Like what area? And so I actually was looking at finance, data, and there was one other, I think it was marketing.
Okay.
Yeah. I was looking at marketing, finance, and data. And I was like, okay, I need to find companies that are big enough that they have all of these departments and figure out where I want to work. So I did end up going to work for a company within 9 months on that contract. That was only a year. I found something within 9 months. And I went to work for them, had all those areas, and I figured out what I wanted to do within 2 years. And the reason that I ended up choosing that field was because most people that work in that field that have that title do end up becoming entrepreneurs. And I knew that I didn't want a 9-to-5 forever. I really did want to be an entrepreneur, but I wasn't quite ready yet. And so the reason that I ended up choosing finance, which was your original question, in my entrepreneurship journey is because for me, I left home at 16. Like,
oh, wow.
Yes,
Okay.
I was finishing high school, and yes, I was like going through this reverse credit program and getting a certificate and becoming a CNA, all those things. But like I left my parents at 16 and I was like, okay, the number one thing that I have to do is finish high school because if you don't finish high school, you can't do anything else.
Right.
Hence why I was also trying to graduate early. And leaving early from home, leaving at 16, you have to know how to manage finances to make it. And I kind of didn't know.
It's not something that's taught.
It's not taught in schools. And knowing how to write a check is great, but let's be honest, when was the last time you wrote a check?
It's been a little while for me. I only knew honestly because I worked in finance, and like I'd have old people coming in for checks and stuff, and I think I took one class that kind of taught you how to write a check, but that was like middle school or something, and like they were like, oh, here's how you do it, and I'm like, what's a check? Like it was so early on. I didn't even take
a class on it. Like my mom showed me how to do it, but I'll out myself here. Anytime that I have to write a check or even a money order now, I literally have to Google it.
Really?
I'm like, I know that I sign here, but what else do I put aside from the amount and signing there?
Well, considering today's world, I mean, instead of using a check to send money, you just Zelle or Cash App or Venmo.
Yeah.
Like there's no reasons to do checks anymore. And they're also much less secure. Like when I was working for the banks, that's when I really got to understand how unsecure checks are. I was like, wait, so we can cash a check under this amount, and we're not even going to check ID. We're not going to check to make sure this is the person. And I was like, in my head, low-key thinking, like, someone could literally make a whole business out of this, just stealing checks, making sure they're under this certain amount and cashing them, and they wouldn't have an eye batted at them.
Not that you're giving anyone any ideas.
No ideas.
Yeah. So, that's essentially how I transitioned into finance. And now I really just focus on infinite banking, bulletproof trusts, and, if you need short-term life insurance as well. And I think it's important to note, when it does come to infinite banking, there are different ways that you can structure it. One of the most popular ways is using an IUL, which is Indexed Universal Life Insurance. So the license that I ended up getting for finance is just the producer's license. Okay. You can also get securities too. Like if you wanted to look more into something that was a variable in the stock market, I'm just not at that point yet because there's a lot more moving parts, and I'm honestly not sure if I want to do it. And I don't want to get a license just to have it.
So I know a lot of the listeners and stuff that might be hearing this may know nothing about finance.
Mhm.
And even someone who's been in finance for a little while, you're still talking some terms that I'm not even familiar with. So I guess in the most easiest way to comprehend everything that you do and stuff, can you kind of, as if almost speaking to a third grader, I guess,
Sure.
kind of dumb it down. I don't want to say dumb it down, but
I can break it down.
yeah, kind of like make it a little bit easier to understand of like all the stuff you're talking about, the stuff that you do. Yeah.
Yeah. So I would say a third grader doesn't have any degree yet. So let's
That's
say
true.
that you just finished college and you're not really sure what to do with your money and how money works.
Okay.
So for student loans, I mean, that's a debt. That's something that you have to start paying on even if you defer it.
Mm-hmm.
And regardless of any other debt or investments that you have, I think it's important to understand the full picture at that point in your life.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to avoid investing because you have those student loans. You know, you still want to pay on them, but you still want to invest because when it comes to investing, time is on your side. And you can't make more time. Time is only going forward.
Right.
So the other benefit of that is the younger you are, the less expensive it is usually to have life insurance. So if you were to get the life insurance then you would be locked in at a lower rate. And then you would also be able to leverage it later on as it continues to grow and you continue to pay into it. And the benefit of that is that as it's growing, you can withdraw from your cash value with an IUL, and you can use that in other investments. You can invest in real estate, you can invest in your business, whatever it is. And eventually you would want to pay back that loan so that you don't continue to be charged interest on it. But if you didn't pay back the loan, then it would just be withdrawn from your death benefit at the time of your passing. Knock on wood, though, we don't want anyone to be passing away anytime soon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when it comes to life insurance,
Mhm.
obviously I know that people have definitely mentioned life insurance before, and especially these days, I feel like there's more and more people that are in that business that are trying to still recruit people. I feel like that's not obviously life insurance, like all this finance stuff. None of this is really taught in high school. None of this, like, you're not taught investing tactics. You're not taught stock market, life insurance, assets, anything like that in high school. At least I didn't in high school. I don't know about any of these other high schools anywhere else, but for those who aren't really familiar with what life insurance is, why it is important to have it, I know that there's been shows and stuff like, oh, I have a life insurance plan and stuff, but it's usually someone in their middle ages or something that's even worrying about life insurance.
Mm-hmm.
So especially someone that young that you're talking about, someone that's fresh out of school and stuff, what is life insurance and why would it benefit them at all to have it?
Yeah, so life insurance is meant for your life, right? Obviously, the guarantee is the death benefit. But when it comes to utilizing the life insurance, it's being able to access that cash value while it's still growing, while you're still averaging like 9% in that account. And then whatever you're withdrawing in the loan, you know, you're going to average somewhere between 4 to 5%. And so the importance of that is to be able to diversify your investments. So if you withdraw something out in a loan and you're like, hey, I want to go buy a house as an investment, or hey, I want to reinvest this into my business, you're essentially taking money from yourself, you're being your own bank, and then you're using that money to grow what your cash flow is because you're reinvesting it into something that's going to pay you in cash flow and dividends, whatever it is, right? Mostly cash flow.
Mm-hmm.
And from there, like I said, you would want to pay it back because it is going to accrue interest on what you would have to pay back in the loan. But if you didn't and you just passed away, then it would be paid back. Does that help explain it more?
A little bit. Obviously there's the guarantee of the death benefit.
Mm-hmm.
But that also would only matter at least in my eyes, if you have a spouse or someone to receive that benefit.
Mhm.
If you're just a single person coming out of college, that kind of still makes it a little bit confusing, but it's also what's the perk of that versus just credit cards or having a savings account or something.
Because the interest would be lower on loaning yourself the money.
Okay.
Yeah. So credit cards are somewhere between 19 and 27% right now.
Mm-hmm.
So if you wanted to pay less in interest, then that would be the perk of it. But I also don't know of anyone that's taking a credit card and using that as a down payment on a house to be able to have real estate investment or to do a fix and flip. And then outside of credit cards, there's loans. Loans at the bank can be either difficult to get
Mm-hmm.
or they can have high interest rates as well. Whereas the life insurance, when you go to apply for it, it's just going to be more so based off of your age and your health. So like your medical background. The younger you are, the healthier you are, right?
Right.
Yeah. So that would be the benefit of applying for it then, right out of college. And in addition to it, like you don't have to apply for $1 million. Like you probably wouldn't want to pay that premium. It would be really expensive.
Right.
But you could apply for something that's lower in face value for the death benefit, maybe around $300K or so. And then as you're paying that, like I said, it's going to be building interest. That account's going to be averaging 9%. It's secured, it's fixed, and it's just overall something that would help you in the long run when it comes to diversifying your investments. And then in addition to that, when you're looking at taking those withdrawals, you can take them before age 59 and a half.
Okay, so different than like a 40 or like an R.
A 401k
Yeah,
or an IRA.
yeah.
You don't have those limitations that's placed on it by the IRS where it says you can only withdraw past age 59 and a half.
Okay. That definitely does sound attractive. I know that a lot of people are still like, oh, well, I'll just have a savings account and just put it in there and stuff. And
then you'll be losing money, which is 7% inflation each year.
true. Yeah, a lot of people don't take that in consideration. The fact that most, even high yield savings accounts, are max 3-4%.
Mhm.
Savings bonds still not really that much. For something like this, I know that one of the reasons why people do still put money in banks and stuff is because it is guaranteed up to $250,000 per FDIC.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a guarantee as well with this?
So the FDIC does not cover life insurance. There is a different institution that covers it. And I mean, I don't want to give a haircut over the phone. So if you want to dive more in depth, I'm
Okay.
happy to dive in depth with you. And that goes for any of your listeners too.
Yeah.
They can reach out to me. But can I ask you something?
Yes.
Do you have
absolutely.
life insurance?
I do not. I've been kind of talked about it and I've
Mhm.
been kind of offered it, but it's one of those things that I'm a single guy, that I don't have like a wife or something that would receive the benefit. I also don't personally make enough money to just be like, I'm just going to put this over here. I'm still at that point, like in the early 20s kind of stuff, to where like I make money and then maybe my personal investments is
Mhm.
what I know, which is kind of more along the lines of stocks. And
So if you died tomorrow, who would pay for your funeral?
if there was a funeral,
Well, if there was a funeral, it doesn't sound very nice.
yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Um,
So just to throw that out there, right? Again, life
Yeah.
insurance is based off your age and your health. So if you wanted to get something like a term policy that's really low monthly, that's something that we could absolutely do. Whereas if you wanted to get something for investment, it's going to be a little bit more expensive because you're putting it away and investing it.
yeah,
But again, you can still touch that money. You're not locking your money up because you're still able to loan it out to yourself before age 59 and a half to be able to access it. So I think like the best thing for you to do would be to sit down with someone. I'm happy to sit down with you and just understand how it works
okay.
before making that decision of like, no, I don't need this, because you don't know what it is you're saying no to without understanding all the ins and outs of it, of how it works, right?
Yeah,
So, I mean, it's up to you. No one can force you, right?
Right.
But that would be my recommendation to anyone. Instead of thinking, oh, this person's trying to sell me, just understand how it works first. And if you don't like the agent, you can go somewhere else.
Yeah. I think that's been kind of one of the reasons I haven't gotten into it, is because I personally throw up a lot of red flags around salespeople, because I was in sales for so long myself, and people are always trying to recruit for everything and anything. And so a lot of times, like, they're saying it, but they're not willing to break it down. They're just kind of trying to throw these big words at you to make you feel inferior or something, or make you feel like they're on top, and that, like, oh, you should listen to me because I say big words type of stuff. Or just kind of, I have like my own inferiority complex of like, oh, I was in personal finance for so long, I don't want to act like I don't know these terms, even though I was obviously in a very different side of finance than this whole thing with life insurance. And I know there's a lot of people also like, oh, pyramid schemes and stuff. Like,
And I think that's the stigma, right? Like these are the things that we're scared of. But when you meet someone that's willing and open to have that conversation with you, you can kind of tell that they're a good agent, right? And they actually care about you, because they're going to sit there with you and be like, well, no, this is why that's not true. This is actually how it works. And just to throw that out there, you know, with my firm, we have been in business for a while now, and what you should be aware of. And so when it comes to like picking an agent out, it sounds like, you know, those fears are definitely there, and that stigma is there of like, well, this person's just trying to recruit me. This person's just a salesperson. Maybe this person just has the presentation memorized. And that can be true for a lot of people, but you definitely want to make sure that you're talking to someone that, you know, is going to answer your questions and knows how to structure it properly based off what your needs are, because everyone has different needs, and is actually willing to shop around for you.
So in your experience with kind of talking to people about all of this, what is like the biggest things that people don't understand yet that you wish that it's kind of like one of those things where if you just knew this, then your whole mindset would be completely different, like whether they are experienced or brand new to this whole world of life insurance? And I don't know what else you guys do, if it's just life insurance or if it's other commodities as well. But is there like something that like I just wish people understood more about the importance of this, or just that like basically give us that kind of finance lesson we never learned in high school, that we kind of were like, man, if they just taught us this in high school, my whole life would be different.
Yeah, I think it just goes back to my example earlier of like, you know, I left home at 16. When you're graduating high school, whether you're graduating college, you kind of need to know the same things. You need to know how to invest. You need to know how to manage debt, how to pay it off. And then whether you're working towards being debt free or you want to be financially independent, retire early, you know, you need to do it at the same time. That's my hot take on it. And I know that everyone has a different take, right? They're like, no, I only want to be debt free. I want to pay off everything now. Well, even if you pay off everything now with any method, snowball, avalanche, doesn't matter. You can call it the bunny rabbit method, whatever you want to call it. You're still going to be losing out on what you could be investing now, and how time is going to take that investment and grow it. So I think that it's just really important to look up those different communities and find out what works for you and what makes sense to you, because everything is not for everyone. You know, finance is not for everyone. IOLs are not for everyone, whatever it is. But there are methods out there that you can find that work for you.
So you mentioned two terms, snowball and avalanche. What do those mean?
So snowball and avalanche are just methods of how you pay off debt.
Okay.
So one is faster than the other. It's just like if you're going to pay off a higher interest debt versus one that's like a higher account value.
So you are like a certified financial advisor, correct? Like you have a certification for that?
No, so those are different things. So,
okay.
Yeah, so there is a certified financial planner. There's that type of license. And then there's also what I am licensed for is like a producer's license for life and health. And then there's also like a securities license. So there's definitely different licenses in the financial world. And I would say that regardless of what you're looking for, whether it's your financial advisor or your agent, they can't always help you with everything unless they're licensed in everything. So just know that when you are looking, there are different people to be looking for, and you would essentially be building out a team. Like you would have an accountant, you would have a financial advisor, and then you could also have like an agent to be able to help you with all these things.
I definitely do appreciate you kind of having that transparency of like moving out when you were 16.
Mm-hmm.
If you were able to kind of talk again to that kind of 16-year-old self with knowing all the knowledge you have now, with especially all the finance stuff, being in this field and kind of doing all that. I mean, the fact that you were working a full-on CNA job and stuff during college, I'm sure that you were making probably more than the average college student was. What kind of advice do you wish that you could have given that person, whether it was finance, life in general? Because I know that like there's plenty of people out there that are on their own at a very young age and stuff, and like we've mentioned before, there's not a lot of kind of guidance in that financial aspect. There's all these people on YouTube and stuff that you can try to learn from a little bit, but they're still going to be spitting out all these terms and stuff that people don't know. And I feel like there's just not enough kind of guidance in that area. So obviously you might be a little bit biased because you have this business and you're in that, but just in general, I mean, you have this passion for finance, you have this passion for helping people and stuff. So how would you guide your 16-year-old self with all that?
You know, there was a lot of things that my 16-year-old self did right. For instance, finishing high school and getting a CNA license. But I would say if I was going to say something financially, it would be, you know, I would have opened some sort of life insurance back then, or even a 401k. And I didn't. And my rationale, my reasoning was like, well, anything that I make right now really should either be going towards school or it should be going towards my student loans. And I mean, it's not wrong. You know, that's what it worked. Like, it's how I worked it out at the time. But had I known then what I know now, I would have opened something. I would have opened a 401k. I would have opened an IUL, or I would have opened, you know, even a term policy.
Even at like an early age like that.
I would have.
Okay.
Yeah. And don't get me wrong, there are like age limitations to when you can open some of those things.
Right.
So, for me, when I was working as a CNA, like I was already over 18, whereas if I was under 18, I would have just opened a 401k.
So if you did open any of those accounts at that early of an age, what do you think it could look like today if like you did do that, just to kind of give people a little bit of an example of like how it can change your life, how it can help somebody? Like, oh, if I did this when I was 16 and I had it up until whatever age, we don't have to get into ages right now, but like what kind of effects could that have had?
Yeah, so had I opened something like around 16, like a 401k or an IRA, whatever would have been plausible at that time, the compounding interest is pretty insane when you look at it, getting a start on it that young. And I mean, I don't have any examples memorized off the top of my head, but you're getting about an extra 4 years as someone that started when they're 18. But if we're being really honest, a lot of people probably aren't opening those types of accounts until their mid-20s, right? So potentially you're getting like another 10 years ahead of everyone else.
Wow. And that, like you said, time is on your side, especially when it comes to things like compound interest. And that's one of the things that like the most notorious investor in the world, Warren Buffett, that's like the main secret that he tells people is like, people are like, oh, how did you get rich and all that kind of stuff? And he's like, compound interest, literally just compounding it over time and stuff and not freaking out. And that's one of the reasons why I was into kind of like day trading and stuff for a little bit, but it just stresses you out, especially with things like crypto and all those things that have such high fluctuation of like you check it 1 hour and oh my gosh, I just lost all my money, and then check it another hour and it's oh, I'm a millionaire, awesome type of stuff, and just the huge fluctuation. So I think personally there does need to be more awareness around stuff that is a little bit more of a safer option like this, because there is so much more awareness around those more scarier options. And yes, you can find success in a lot of those things like day trading or stock trading and all those things. But it is pretty much like gambling unless you are in it for the long haul, which even then, this like stock market alone, if you're looking at something with S&P 500, it doesn't average 15 to 20% a year. It averages much less than that. I don't know the exact numbers off the top of my head. But yes, I mean, obviously there's never been a time in history where the stock market has just gone down and stayed down. It has gone up, but you have to be someone that's willing to ride that wave out a little bit. Someone that's willing to be like, cool, I'm going to invest in this and just not look at it for the next 30 years, and then that's going to be it. Which it kind of sounds like this is something similar, except it's a little bit more something that's guaranteed versus
it's fixed.
It's fixed. It's not like
or there's a floor is the better way to say it. It really just depends on your needs. So there's a floor. The floor is like 0%. And then just to clarify, like for me personally, I would not have had access to an IUL, like a juvenile policy, because my parents wouldn't sign off on it, and I didn't have a relationship with my parents at the time. But it doesn't mean that it's not possible for a juvenile to have a policy. We do have juvenile policies. You can get one as early as 2 weeks old with your parents on it.
2 weeks?
Yeah.
I can only imagine
imagine the leg up that you would have now if your parents got you something at 2 weeks old.
Yeah, 2 weeks old on your 18th birthday. Hey, surprise, we have this. And it's like, your entire college tuition's covered now.
Exactly.
And then some.
That's exactly what you can use it for.
Yeah.
Or even buying a car for them when they turn 16.
Or, because I know that there used to be like those Gerber commercials or something that were like, oh, a college fund. And like, I had no idea what that was until like I grew up. And I'm like, oh, okay, college fund's like, oh, that doesn't really sound, I mean, you're investing into this, but like the interest is pennies on the dollar. You're not really.
Yeah. And brief side note there, I think there's a new Gerber baby. I don't know if you've seen it, but definitely something worth Googling later.
A new Gerber baby?
Yeah, because you know that there is like a Gerber baby as the logo.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that they have a new one now.
Do they really?
Yeah, definally worth Googling.
Oh.
And seeing what happened to the Gerber baby we grew up with.
I'm
because that person is all grown up now.
I can only imagine. Yeah, that baby that you saw in those diapers, that was me. You get to see my baby picture every day growing up and stuff. I can't even imagine what that was like with that, but that's interesting.
I thought it was just their face, but yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know that. I mean, obviously I don't have kids, so I don't purchase baby products ever. So I haven't seen the Gerber baby. I mean, yeah, even when I'm at Walmart, I mean, I'm not in the baby aisle or anything, so I haven't seen that. But now I'm like gonna go there, and you're gonna see some random guy that without kids, like, hey, sorry, I'm just trying to look to see if there's a new baby on here because I was told. So interesting. Okay, I didn't know that part.
Yeah. Should we get into these questions?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So as you guys saw with the last episode, we're trying a new kind of segment here. I had a list of questions that I've been wanting to ask people, and I hadn't really figured out how to incorporate it into the conversations. It was always just, I write out a list of conversations, and most of the time we got through maybe half of them because it would just be going on different rabbit holes and tangents. But now I want to kind of get into some of these more. Some of them are slightly taboo, maybe. A lot of them can be just like personal stuff, but it's not like, give me your social security card or something like that. It's just shower thoughts or just like random thoughts of like, that'd be an interesting thing to kind of ask someone to get their take on it. Kind of maybe stuff that you ask yourself internally, and just like random stuff. So for the first one, this is kind of something that we mentioned a little bit earlier with self-discipline. So how do you personally practice self-discipline? Like, what are the biggest ways that you practice it? Maybe if there's certain things that, like, details about what things that you practice in it.
Yeah, this is an interesting question because there's a lot of ways I can answer it. But for me, I was not always a dog person. I actually used to have cats. Like I always had a cat growing up.
Mm-hmm.
Now I have a dog, a Siberian Husky.
Mm-hmm.
He's 50
Very
pounds.
adorable.
Yep, 50 pounds. His name's Atlas.
Atlas.
And
Okay.
he makes sure I get outside of the house every single day. And so one of the ways that I was like, okay, I want to be more into the gym. I want to be like more like going outside because there would be times I would not go outside for a few days. I was like, okay, I'm going to pull the trigger. I'm going to get a dog. And so I didn't plan to get a dog for like a year or two. I held out for 6 months, I think, and then I got Atlas. And Atlas definitely makes sure that I go outside every single day. We go on about 1 to 2 miles of a walk.
Okay.
So that's one way that I stay disciplined. Buy yourself a dog if you want to go outside.
Honestly, I actually
Yeah.
attest to that because without my dog, I wouldn't have, like, I take my dog out every morning, every night. Try to take her to the park and stuff. And I'm not sure if you're into like Andrew Huberman or kind of learning a little bit more about neuroscience, but they've mentioned on those podcasts and stuff the importance of like getting sunlight in your eyes in the morning and kind of using that kind of thing for your security and rhythm, and the importance of just like getting outside for a little bit and stuff, like not keeping yourself cooped up indoors all day. Like get some fresh air, get vitamin D, get those neurons firing and stuff. So I completely attested that. And if it wasn't for my
Yes.
dog, I can't guarantee that I'd be getting outside every day.
Yes, and our time outside has evolved now.
Mhm.
He'll now come outside with me when I meditate because it
Okay.
always ends in belly rubs for him, and he likes that.
Okay.
Yeah. And then he'll come outside when I read too, because I usually do it back to back. Like I'll meditate and then read. Yeah.
So, do you have like any routines or anything that you try to stick to as far as like discipline? Because I know for me, for discipline, the biggest ways that I try to is with sticking to like a certain morning routine to kind of start the day right, and then maybe a nightly routine, which I haven't been doing the best at, but
Mhm.
every day is a new day to start the discipline. It doesn't have to be when you're born or whatever. Like, just start now. That's what I usually tell
Yeah.
people. So I'm kind of curious about maybe what kind of routines you might have.
Yeah, I think you really just said it out right there. Like every day is a new day. For me, I I really don't have the same exact thing that I do every single day. If I were to try and look for one or two things, it would really be that I end my night by taking my vitamins
Okay.
and going to bed. And I usually do that like right after I take Atlas outside for like a final walk. Um, but I would say that's the one thing that I do consistently every single day
Yeah.
outside of brushing my teeth is taking my vitamins. There's nothing that's really, oh, I wake up at 5 a.m., I take a cold shower, I go for a
Yeah.
run, and then I take my dog out. Like, no, that's not who I am as a person. And I definitely wouldn't say that having a routine like that contributed or didn't contribute
Yeah.
to my success. Like, I just know that regardless, I was going to be successful. I didn't have another choice. Um, so I don't know, like that's the most I would dive into it for my day to day. I do try to meditate every day, but I don't meditate every day. I'm not gonna lie to you. Sometimes I go like 2 or 3 weeks without
Yeah.
meditating.
Is there a certain type of meditation that you try to stick to?
It really just depends. Sometimes it's focus, sometimes it's breathing. Like it depends.
I know, especially when it comes to discipline, it doesn't have to be routines. It doesn't have to
Mhm.
be, like you said, waking up at 5 a.m., cold showers, and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But one of the things with discipline that I've been learning a lot is the whole point of discipline is learning how to do stuff that you don't want to do, even though it has the possibility or the likelihood of producing better results later on.
Mhm.
That's the whole point of it. Like, the whole point of waking up super early is because you possibly get more time for productivity or more time during the day. The whole point of cold showers is to train your body to do stuff that you don't like to do because of the benefits of cold showers, which obviously everyone will say all these different things behind it, but the whole point for me that I see is the fact of like I haven't met a single person that's like, I love torturing myself to get into that cold plunge. They do it because,
Yeah.
like, even Joe Rogan, when he talks about it on his podcast, he does it because it's that ability to say, I can do hard shit. I can do hard things and get through it. And so I don't know if there's little things like that for you that, like, I do this, even though I don't want to do this, I still do it because I know that's good for me. Is there something like that for you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely someone that requires a lot of self-care, from going to the gym, from
Mm-hmm.
getting my nails done, to, even just reading, meditating. Like, there are a lot of things that I do, and there are definitely days that I don't want to do it. There are definitely days that I don't want to go to the gym, but I still go.
Right.
And I would say that I can agree with you. Discipline is definitely a mindset. But again, like, there isn't one thing that I do every single day consistently. I would just say it really is a mindset of doing it when you don't want to do it.
Yeah.
And I love the gym.
You don't want to do it every day,
No.
though.
No, even with boxing, like, I love boxing,
Boxing.
but
Okay.
I'll get to class and I'll be like, I just want to go home, man. Like, I
Yeah.
don't want to be here. But at the end of the class, I'm like, I'm glad that I did this. I'm glad that I stayed.
Is that how you kind of push yourself to do it then? Is that, like, just remembering the feeling at the end? Because I know that's kind of one of the ways I'm able to do it, is by, it's like, you know what? I don't want to do this right now, but I know how I'm going to feel afterward, and that kind of pushes me.
I would say yes, but the feeling that I get at the end has changed over time.
Okay.
Because in the beginning with the gym, it was really just accomplishing this goal of being able to lift 50 pounds over my head. And that was years ago, and I can do that now. But continuing with the gym, it was like, okay, well, I get a runner's high, or I get like this euphoric feeling after I finish a workout. But now, discipline, and not even just the gym, it's gotten to this point of where, okay, if I'm going to do this, I want to feel proud about it after.
Right.
Because you can go to the gym and feel two ways about it, or you can feel proud about it. But like, any project that I take on, I really try to focus on the outcome of it. I'm like, is this something that I'm going to be proud of that I did later? Because if it's not, then why am I going to waste time and like energy putting it into this? And that's how I would say my discipline has changed over the years, because I don't want to waste my time. I don't want to waste my energy and do something that I'm not proud of, or, it's just not going to turn out how I envision it in my head. And when it comes to that, I definitely push through it on the days, even when I don't want to do it, even when I don't want to do the project, even when I don't want to go boxing. Like, I'm going to be proud of myself for staying till the end and sticking it out.
Is there somewhere where you think your discipline kind of stemmed from? Because I know for some people, it's maybe watching their parents or something. Like, oh, my dad used to wake up at 4 a.m. to go to work for 12 hours a day and stuff. And, like, obviously he didn't want to do that every day, but he had to. And so I learned to be disciplined through watching him or something. Or was this kind of something that's came natural to you?
Discipline did not come natural to me. I think that's why I wasn't allowed to watch TV growing up. I would say that my dad definitely instilled a lot of discipline in me, and like encouraging me to do things and to finish them.
Okay.
And, find that sense of pride within myself.
Right.
But I think finding it as a kid versus finding it as an adult is completely different. And you just have to like go through these doors until you get there and you realize that and reach that point of self-realization.
I agree, definitely. I couldn't agree more. Next question, kind of also related to what we talked about a little bit earlier. What do you wish you knew sooner or earlier?
Well, at which point in my life?
I guess the point in your life to where you feel like maybe you were the most lost, or that you needed the most direction. Like, I don't know if there's a specific time in your life that you can remember that you kind of definitely needed some direction, or a push in a direction, and you just were kind of just lost.
Yeah. I would say being a senior, whether it was high school or college, I needed that direction because I got the senioritis really bad. Like I almost walked away. Um, and I would just say the thing that I wish I knew sooner is that that feeling doesn't go away, and you just have to learn how to deal with it because it's not something that has to do with you purely being a senior. It has to do with any project that you work on or any like struggle that you go through in life when you're trying to reach an outcome when you're working on something for years, right? And that could even transfer to relationships as well. Like
Yeah.
you have to pick and choose the things that mean the most to you, and there's always going to be a hard time, and you have to choose how you're going to deal with it. And you can walk away, but it better only be temporarily.
I like that. I like that a lot. Yeah, it's there was a thing that I looked at and it was like you have to choose your hard. It's hard to be broke, but it's also hard to like it could be hard to get rich, but it's also hard to be broke. It can be hard to go to the gym, but it's also a hard life to live an unhealthy lifestyle. Like choosing your hard.
And I think that goes back to the discipline question too, because you can choose your hard, but what's hard for you is going to be based off your discipline.
Yeah.
Some people are just really content with where they are in their life and they don't want to grow, and that's where they want to stay. And I'm just not that person.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know where my ambition came from, but it carries me everywhere.
No, I definitely see it. Like,
yeah.
you definitely carry a lot of ambition. So, and then kind of also piggybacking off of what you were mentioning with like, everything is temporary. It doesn't matter what it is, and that's one of the things that I've learned is like, I don't care how good something is, I don't care how bad something is. It's going to come in waves, and it's going to go up and down. It's whatever feeling that you're going through, whatever situation you're going through, like, sometimes you can control how long it'll last if you continuously stay in a certain mindset or if you continuously stay in a certain way, then that could definitely affect maybe how much longer it will go. But it is temporary. And that's something that's definitely helped me, whether it was as a younger person or in my 20s, is like, shit, like, I have to worry about housing right now. It's really stressful right now. Okay. You know what? It'll be temporary. I'm going to look back in like 3 years' time and be like, oh man, I can't believe I was worrying about that type of stuff. So I like that a lot. Third question. What's the biggest fear you have in life?
Ooh, that's a good one. This might make you laugh, but my biggest fear is being unsuccessful.
Honestly, that's I relate almost scarily too much to that because I've been asked that question. I'm like, I mean, spiders, yeah, I get spiders and snakes and all that kind of stuff, but I'm like, the thought of not being able to provide for my family, the thought of not accomplishing what I feel like I could accomplish, the thought of living an unsuccessful lifestyle, and like when I see older people and stuff, and I see some of their ways, I'm like, it would scare me so much if I had to live that kind of life. So when you mentioned that, I was like, whoo, you're speaking a different language to me.
And I think it goes back to your why too. And again, like for me, my back was against the wall when I was 16. I was like, I gotta be successful or I don't know what I'm gonna do.
Yeah, there's no choice
like
there.
I don't have a choice. But now, like, that's still my biggest fear is being unsuccessful. And like, obviously I'm a successful person, like I'm well accomplished, I've done all these things, but it still scares me. And it's so ironic to me that no matter what I accomplish, I'm always going to have that fear. It doesn't matter.
Yeah. That was I don't know if I've ever mentioned the podcast Armchair Expert with Dak Shepard. I'm just name dropping left and right here.
You are.
But he's mentioned quite a bit on there. Like, even as a successful actor, even as a successful podcast host that makes whatever amount, he was mentioning of how, like, even after making all the money, he still always has that fear of like, what if it all disappears, or what if this happens? Like, there's always that what if factor. Like, it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't matter. Like, you can always set a certain thing, but that's where I feel like that whole mentality, like that scarcity mentality, comes from. Is like, you might say now, like, oh, the moment I hit six figures, I'll be successful and stuff. And you hit those six figures, and you're like, yeah, no, absolutely not. Like, I definitely need more. And there's always that I need more mentality. So I feel like there's never going to be a point in your life to where you truly feel like I am successful now. You're always going to be mentally creating some sort of new thing for yourself.
I don't know if I can say that. Like,
Okay.
I am successful now and like not feel it. I know that I'm successful now, but I still have that fear of failure, that fear of unsuccessful. And I think that's situational too,
Yeah.
right? Because you can only control so much of your life, right? You can't control the weather, you can't control what happens outside, and you can't
Right.
control how people perceive you, right? Like you can't. It's not possible to control every factor. And I know that I'm successful. I know that I've accomplished a lot, but I
Mm-hmm.
have that fear of being unsuccessful as I continue to go accomplish new things.
Okay. So kind of like just losing the success then.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you could say that losing the success or like starting a new project and having that flop.
Mm. Okay. No, I definitely understand. Yeah, I've been there as well. And
Mm-hmm.
that's definitely a big relatable feeling to me as well. And even like earlier when I was saying like scarcity mentality, it's also like that whole thing of like, oh, I'm at this point. There's a certain feeling that you get like, I have so much to lose now.
Mm-hmm.
And for someone that maybe that hasn't had that feeling before, like when you're at a lower point, you have less to lose. So you're willing to take more risk. You're willing to kind of do more stuff. But then when you get to a certain point where it's like, I've built all this up, I have so much to lose now. You start to take less risks and stuff. You start to have a different mentality. So um I don't know if that fully relates to what you were saying, but that's kind of what it was triggering in my head.
I mean, I think that's based off perception,
Yeah, yeah.
right? And that's not an incorrect perception to have.
Mm-hmm.
Like, sure, there's a fear of loss, but for me, like, I know that I could rebuild whatever I lost.
Okay.
Like that doesn't trigger me. That doesn't make me have this fear of not being successful. I think it's more so relying on other people to give you grace.
Right.
Because when you do have that project that flops and you know you shouldn't pick it back up, you need that support system to be there to say, you know what, it's okay. You don't have to pick it back up. You can do something else. And I'm so grateful that I
Mm-hmm.
really do have that support system and I really do have those people that care for me because I absolutely have those fears.
Yeah.
And we have those conversations and they're like, I don't know why you feel this way. You are so successful.
Oh my God, the amount of times something like that
Yeah.
is said, like, I don't know why you, like,
Yeah.
when I tell people my story, they're like, how old are you? I'm like, look, you compare, like, I think that
Age
also
is a
comes into the
social
comparison.
construct,
Yeah.
honestly. Like maturity comes at any age, at any
Yeah.
time.
And that's even the other day I was talking to someone about a movie that I'm making, and I was kind of bringing him by a little bit of my life story. He's like, how old are you again? I'm like, there's different comparison values. You might see me, and like I've had a lot of people see me, and they're like, wow, like you've done so much stuff. But for me, I'm like, I don't see it that way. But that's just my perception and what I compare it to. And I mean, especially for someone as yourself that definitely has already accomplished so much in early age, I feel like you're almost numb to a certain type of accomplishment. Like
Mm-hmm.
you have such a higher level or higher thing or higher view of yourself that someone else might look at it and be like, wow, like you've accomplished all this, and you're like, oh, this is I don't see it that way. I mean, thank you, but I don't see it that way.
I think personally for me, I would chalk it up to just being humble, but it just depends because I don't think that you should compare yourself to anyone. Everyone has a different journey, different
Right.
life. And I really strive to compare myself to who I was yesterday. because that's not a trait that I want to have.
Right.
And I definitely will say that it is something that I've struggled with in the past, comparing myself to other people that are more or less successful. And it's not beneficial. It's not conducive, and it's actually very harmful.
Mm. I know that we mentioned a bit with success earlier, and that kind of perfectly segues into the last question that I have. What is, for you personally, it doesn't mean like just your view on it entirely, but for you personally, what is your definition of success? Like, what would have to happen in your life if you don't already, and I know you said that you are successful now, but obviously you have still so many goals and so much that you want to achieve. Whether it's money, which I'm not going to judge if it is, or independence or happiness, like so many people have different definitions of success. I'm kind of curious on what your definition of it would be.
I think there's different buckets in which you measure success.
Okay.
So I think that falls into family, finances, and like personal growth and happiness. And so for me, I'm not going to say it's not money. That would be a complete lie. There's definitely a monetary factor because I want to retire my dad. And, you know, I can't yet.
Yeah.
And he has gone through his own struggles in his life, in his marriages, and he can't retire himself. Like, he can't retire without help. And I really want to retire him. That would mean a lot to me.
Okay.
And that's part of the reason I work as hard as I do. And that's part of the reason that I really just keep continuing to grow. The other bucket, you know, family, I kind of touched on that, but also, you know, I think not everyone's cut out to be a family person. And I'm not saying that's not something I want. I do think that it's something that I want, but it's finding the right person. And I think that's another measurement of success, because I wouldn't want to be in a relationship where I'm not happy, or in a failed relationship. And I think that there are definitely a lot of ups and downs that you go through in any relationship, any marriage, and knowing how to go through them in a healthy way is important.
Absolutely.
And that kind of segues into the last bucket that I mentioned, is like your own personal growth and happiness. We are all human. We all deserve some grace. And being able to offer that grace to other people is important, because personally, the way that I feel about it is the more grace that you're able to give other people, the more grace that they're willing to give you back, because they understand that we're all only human. And I think that even goes for like today's show, right? Like, there's a lot of deep things that we talked about, a lot of like really technical things that we talked about that, you know, we didn't get too far in depth on. But, you know, this also isn't like a finance podcast. We don't want to get too far in depth on them, right?
We will also want to give them a reason to contact you for further information. So
thanks, appreciate that plug. But like, I'm sure someone could come back and say, oh, well, you didn't say this right, or like, oh, you can actually do this. Sure, but we all deserve grace.
You're a human being.
I'm a human being. This is my first podcast. I'm sorry if I said something wrong, but obviously not my intent. And there are people out there that really just like look for these kinds of things to respond to them. There are.
That's part of being on one of these things. It doesn't matter how angelic you try to sound. It doesn't matter how uncontroversial you try to be. There's going to be somebody that's going to try to nitpick and say, oh, you mentioned this about this, and no, it's, I mean, you have the authority yourself to speak on the stuff that you do. So it's not like you're talking about something illegally. If this was like a thing and you're giving financial advice and you're not a financial advisor, that's a whole different situation. But in a situation like this, yes, there's going to be people that are doing that. But that's how it is with everything. Every podcast, every YouTube channel, every profile in the world is going to have somebody that's going to try to rebuttal you in some way, regardless if it is from the heart or just because they like to stir up chaos.
I know. And like, I'm absolutely happy to sit down and have a debate with anyone that wants to.
Yeah.
Like, no problem at all. And maybe we'll both walk away and learn something new, if not about each other, then about finances.
Yeah.
I don't by any means know everything there is to know about everything or in every area of finance, especially if you ask me about securities or accounting.
You're still learning every day.
I will tell you, I know how to set up a tea table, but don't ask me to actually do the accounting.
Which, I mean, it's fair. I mean, I would be a little bit nervous if you said you were the complete master of all of it versus I'm learning every day. Like that, even going to a doctor, going to a doctor that says that he knows everything. And I'm like, do you though? I mean, they're making new discoveries every day. You know everything that there is to know.
Did you read the article that came out yesterday?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I would be, even when it comes to something like life insurance or something, yes, obviously it's something that you're involved with. But I'm sure there's still things every single day, especially because it has to do with finance and the economy is changing.
The market does change.
Everything changes, especially when it comes to money. So I'd be a little bit worried if you're like, oh, I'm the 100% master. There's not a single thing that happens in finance or in life insurance that I don't know about. I'd be a little bit like, okay.
I think the bigger thing there is to make sure that when you are signing your policy and getting it delivered, that you know everything that there is to know about your policy at the time of delivery. Yeah. But exactly.
The overall umbrella of it. And that's also not to say that you're not confident in it, because I know some people like, oh, like I'm not going to trust because you're confident in what you do talk about. Yes. And you're not going to say something that you're not confident in, that you're not knowledgeable in. You're not going to refer somebody to something that you don't know just because maybe it might so-called make you more money. You're only going to talk to someone about something that you know something about.
And I think it helps for me. Like, again, I'm not in finance for the money. I'm in finance because I really do want to help other people who have gone through similar situations that I've gone through, or just, maybe however I'm speaking speaks to them and they want to know more about it. Like, I'm here for you. Like, let's sit down, let's talk, let's get you on a plan to what makes sense for you.
Well, I feel like we could definitely continue going down many different rabbit holes and talking for hours upon hours upon all these different things. If someone is curious about learning more about life insurance or about some of the policies that you have or just questions in general, how would they reach you?
They can email me. It would be Brittany@shestaysinvested.com.
Okay.
Or they can reach out to me on social media, which is Brittany Gunn Official.
Okay, perfect. So if you do have questions about life insurance, you are interested, I know this isn't a finance podcast, so talking about some of this stuff maybe might not be the most interesting thing in the world, but if it did spark any interest, reach out, ask any questions about it. Brittany is going to be happy to sit down and talk to you about it, see what kind of things that you guys can figure out based off of your situations and stuff. So, Brittany, I appreciate you so much for taking the time today to kind of break things down and talk about, especially an area that I am personally very passionate about. Maybe not life insurance in general, but finance. Because like I said, that's definitely something I think needs more awareness. So thank you again. Is there anything that we missed that you think that needs a little bit of more shout out, or just anything that we missed in general?
I hope we didn't miss anything.
Okay.
If we did, we'll touch on it next time.
Absolutely. Well, thank you.
I'm Brittany, and I've been unmasked by Alex.